Live from the Washington, D.C. area, it's the Inside Scoop. All the news that our viewers want to know. Now, here's the host.
Hi folks, Cesar here with you, back again. Took the summer off. It was hot and it's still hot. It's hot in Herndon, it's hot in Fairfax, it's hot in the Commonwealth, it's even hot in the studio. But I want to thank you for joining us this evening. We have a great show. It's on a hot topic. If you folks aren't familiar with DACA and the latest, by the way, that's the Deferred Action for Childhood Arrivals. It is a huge, huge issue, especially in our region. But with me, I have a great guest, Lisa Johnson-Firth. She is the managing partner for Immigrants First, a law firm, correct? Did I get that right? Correct. Anything specifically that I missed there in that part? No. Good, let's talk about, first of all, I think what you do is amazing. Why did you get involved? Why did you start this? What got you, what compelled you to get involved in this whole issue here?
I've been an immigration lawyer for 15 years, and before that I was a corporate lawyer, and I got involved doing pro bono asylum cases for vulnerable immigrants. And what compels the immigrant issue for me is that when you're protecting the rights of vulnerable people like immigrants, really you're protecting everyone's rights. And so the due process, civil rights aspect of immigration fascinates me, and I feel very passionate about it.
No, God bless you. That's again, thank you for what you do. I know it's not always the greatest rewarding. It's sometimes depressing, I'm sure, but appreciate what you do there. So,
Thank you.
So back to the why, Immigrants First, you all basically focus on the issues that are facing immigrants. And DACA is certainly the non-renewal or the status of folks are affected. So let's walk the folks through, where we are today as a result of the Congress and the President's inability to get something done. So if you're a individual, and by the way, my family was personally affected by this, full disclosure. If you're an individual that was brought here by their parents or some guardian at an early age, undocumented, you were placed into the system, whether it's the school system or the work system, but you are technically not legally here through legal immigration channels, correct?
Right.
So that's the status, and there's an estimated how many millions of people?
Well, there's 800,000 DACA recipients as of right now. There's probably many more children who are undocumented that don't have status at all, but there's about 800,000 DACA recipients.
Okay. So, and the current status, now are they targeted to be deported, or is there a due process? Where do you all come in, and how does that all play out?
So it's a little bit more nuanced than just everyone's going to be deported. I know that's the fear of people right now, that their DACA status will just automatically end and they'll be deported. It's a phase-out program. And so the DACA program started in June 2012, and it has continued until this time. And now what we're in is for persons who already have DACA, they can renew their DACA if their DACA will expire by March 5th, 2018. So in other words, if you have a work permit at this moment in time, and that work permit shows a date of expiry before March 5th of 2018, you can renew your DACA. If it expires after March 5th, you can no longer renew your DACA. So some people have like 2019, you couldn't renew your DACA.
So what does that mean to the average person? What does it mean to the DACA individual? So are they breaking the law on March 6th? Are they?
Well, so the DACA that they currently have, like I said, if their DACA expires before March 5th, 2018, they can renew for another 2-year period. So it's nothing's going to go away immediately. And the people who expire after March 5th, they'll be able to keep their work permit going.
Is the renewal guaranteed?
It's never guaranteed.
Okay.
It's all discretionary. Deferred action itself is discretionary, particularly if they have any kind of criminal record, a significant misdemeanor, such as a DUI, then no, they wouldn't be able to renew their DACA. And in fact, their current DACA feasibly could be taken away from them, arrested by ICE, put into removal proceedings. It is significant for DACA applicants because your driver's license is tied to your work permit date. And so when that work permit expires, your driver's license automatically expires. So that's the most significant outcome. For people who have jobs, it's not recommended that they proactively go to their employer and say, hey, my work permit is now expired. I would wait until the employer asks about your status. You're not under any obligation to volunteer that information. A lot of people are worried about losing their jobs. Larger companies like Costco or Walmart, who have very good human resource departments, will be inquiring, and you're logged in their E-Verify system exactly when your work permit expires. So those people may have a more difficult time retaining a job after the expiration of their DACA.
So assuming they're expired, assuming they do not get renewed, what is then the status of that individual? And keep in mind, these are individuals that pretty much grew up here or as young adults have lived here.
Right.
I know with my nephew on my mom's side, he was brought here as, I think he was just not even 2 years old.
Right.
So he didn't really speak Spanish that well, but I mean, technically he's the person that we're talking about, right? So he is now, he would be someone that would be potentially deported, or does he just have to lay low and not speed and
I think that remains to be seen. Certainly any person in the United States who's out of status, and it will affect people who are losing their TPS right now from the Sudan. So any person who's out of status in the United States is of course deportable. Whether ICE goes after that person and goes to their home or their place of employment and arrests them remains to be seen how aggressive the enforcement will be. This past weekend, for instance, ICE was supposed to be doing targeted raids in our Northern Virginia area. To my knowledge, I haven't heard that there have been too many arrests this past weekend, but it was targeted to happen. So you're always removable, but there's a process for that removal. You're entitled to a hearing with an immigration judge. Right now, our court dockets in Arlington are extended fairly far out, so if you did get put in removal proceedings, likely chances that you wouldn't be concluding those proceedings for several years, which may give you an opportunity to find other ways to legalize your status in the United States.
So people are let go on their own recognizance, right? So I promise to come back, or are they in custody for that
More
period?
often now, when people are arrested, ICE is leaving that decision of releasing to the immigration judge. So it's not too often now that ICE releases people on their own recognizance, particularly if there's any kind of a criminal record. But bond motions with immigration judges are frequent as long as you can show you're not a danger to the community, you're not a flight risk, and you have some path to legalizing your status in the United States.
Gotcha.
So what would be common for a lot of DACA applicants or people who have received DACA that may be losing their DACA status is they may have asylum claims that if they go back to El Salvador, Honduras, or Guatemala, that they could be targeted by gangs. They're not necessarily strong asylum cases, but at least it's something they could apply for if they have a genuine fear of return to their country.
And I think because there's so many variables and case by case, it's all different. What I guess I want to make sure we're addressing is there isn't one blanket sort of profile to these people. They're not, I mean, when I hear people say, well, they're all criminals. Well, define being a criminal. Okay, you broke the law. Well, I just want people to ask themselves if they always drive 55. Because if you drive 56, you are breaking the law. Granted, there are certain severities of the law. There's high treason, there's murder one, and then there's jaywalking. There are way too many people in my view that I'm comfortable with that just lump every one of these folks as they're here illegally, kick them out.
Well, let me clarify a few things, if I might.
Sure.
First of all, it's not a crime to be in the United States unlawfully. Immigration law is civil, it's not criminal. It does overlay the criminal system, so it interprets criminal actions as whether they're deportable or inadmissibilities. But civil immigration law itself is civil. It is a misdemeanor to cross the border the first time, and it's a felony to cross it after a deportation order. But to just be here out of status is not a crime. Okay. That's the first really important thing that people need to understand.
That's a very unique distinction. Okay, so it's not a crime per se. Okay.
Right. So the only reason the main reason that ICE would detain someone is not necessarily because they've committed a crime. It's to secure their removal from the United States. So a lot of people get confused by why people who are immigrants might be detained by ICE, that they're all criminals. That is not the case. That detention is to secure their removal from the United States while they're pending their removal case by an immigration judge. Okay. In terms of whether they're all criminals or not, the vast majority of crimes committed by immigrants are relatively minor. Driving without a license, drunk in public. It's arguable whether DUIs would be considered significant. To some judges, for instance, criminal and immigration judges, DUIs are important and they are significant. Other judges take a more lenient approach. But I would say, at least in my 15 years of being an immigration lawyer, I've only had one client who was a murderer, and none that were rapists or manslaughter or any significant crimes like that. And there are good statistics out there showing, even ICE's own statistics, that most of the people who are alleged criminals, the crimes are minor, very minor. It's just the reason they become significant is because that's the pathway for ICE to pick someone up. Any encounter with law enforcement is a pathway to be turned over to Immigration and Customs Enforcement.
Okay, okay. So again, walking down the street is not a crime. Walking down the street without an ID is not a crime.
Right.
But if you're jaywalking and a policeman stops you, you have to identify yourself.
You have to identify your name.
Okay. Well, let's come back to that because we're starting to get in the really good double clicking on this stuff. So I definitely want to come back to that. So we'll come back. We'll talk about the sort of legalities, all the different scenarios around when people might expect. So, folks, appreciate you being out there and coming back on our next segment.
You know what, guys? There's a lot of tree branches and dry brush over here. We should probably move the bonfire over there.
I'm guessing Smokey liked that idea.
Hey, Hard, what's this?
That's my resignation.
You're resigning.
Why? You've been putting me under a lot of pressure lately. That's why I'm ready to quit.
Oh, I forgot. I'll do better. Please don't quit on me.
Don't let your heart quit on you. Get your uncontrolled high blood pressure to a healthy range before it's too late.
So you can't save money? That's easy as pie. Brown bagging lunch instead of going out. $6 save times 5 days a week times 10 years is $21,000. That's a lot of lettuce. Small changes today, big bucks tomorrow. Feedthepig.org.
Did you know kids who play outdoors have healthier lungs?
Totally.
I did. Did you know that boys that play with dolls make better husbands?
My son has lots of dolls. But did you know terry cloth diapers breathe better?
I did.
It's totally true.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
Did you know that strollers have the right of way on the sidewalk?
Yes.
Yep, I did. Did you guys
Did you know that kids who eat breakfast have higher GPAs?
Yeah, I know.
Yeah. That's actually what I was going to say.
Did you know babies should never touch silver? It's really bad for them.
I knew that.
Did you guys know that statistically friendly kids have more friends?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
That's obvious.
Did you know most people think they're using the right car seat for their kid, but they're not?
Parents who really know it all know for sure that their child is in the right seat at the right age and size. Visit safercar.gov/the-right-seat to make sure your child is protected.
I'm putting that on my blog.
I just put it in mine.
We're back to the Inside Scoop. Here again, your host.
Folks, Cesar here, back with my guest, Lisa Johnson-Firth. She is the managing partner with Immigrants First, a law firm dedicated to servicing our immigrant population. Lisa, thank you for sticking around. We've got a lot to go through. So before the break, we talked about sort of the type of potential legalities people could get into. I gave the scenario, someone walking down the street, they jaywalk, they are stopped by an officer, they are required, or anyone for that matter is required, at least in Virginia, to identify themselves.
That's correct.
To the officer. But you don't have
Name
to.
only.
Name only. I don't have to have photo ID or anything.
You don't have to give them your address or where you're going, any other information.
Okay. Some people would say that's wrong, but that's the law,
That's
right?
the law.
That's right. And I just want to be clear. I don't want to carry papers in America.
Absolutely, immigrants should not be carrying.
People in general.
Well, yeah, I agree with you. People in
Okay.
general should not be compelled to carry documents. but
Americans should not be required to carry papers.
I agree.
Okay, so I hope everyone watching, listening in this country agrees that Americans don't carry papers.
Americans generally don't carry papers, nor are they required to, but I do want to make an important point about immigrants carrying papers, because immigrants do tend to carry their passports or their consular IDs, and they should not be doing that, because if they are stopped and searched by an officer, that's prima facie evidence. In other words, that proves the government's case against them that they're a foreign national.
Gotcha.
So the only people who are legally required to carry an ID are lawful permanent residents. They must have their original green card on their person.
So some of my dear friends would say that in order to verify those people, we do have to profile. So I don't know how else to find out if someone's here legally or not, or staying within their visa or terms, unless I profile. The average person, they'll say, well, we all know who's here legally or not. You just have to ask them. So what do you think of that line of reasoning, where someone that looks a certain way is probably percentage-wise a higher positive for being an immigrant? So police should be, or ICE or someone should be able to ask them for their papers, because they're not really U.S. citizens, so these laws really don't apply to them. And those aren't my views. Those are the views that I've heard in several discussions.
Well, the law applies to everybody. It's not constitutional to racially profile. That's been shown over and over again. Prince William was our most local jurisdiction that we went through this debate in 2008 and 2009. And Prince William changed its racial profiling such that what officers could do was arrest someone for a crime, and then anyone who ends up at the jail, so spending a night in the jail, would then be interviewed by Immigration and Customs Enforcement as to their legal status. But that would be everybody, U.S. citizens, foreign nationals. So in terms of profiling, it's unconstitutional. And I guess it begs the question is, why would you be stopping these people in the first place? Because the police don't have jurisdiction to enforce immigration laws, and ICE isn't generally just walking around on the streets.
By the way, I'm with you on this side. The contrarian view would say, well, a lot of these people are here, they've committed a crime being here, so by default, they are criminal, and they're probably more inclined to engage in criminal activity. So the police, the community, is well within its right to direct law enforcement to verify.
Under the Constitution, the answer to that would be no. The criminal justice system takes care of this process. When someone's arrested for a crime and they're detained, in almost every jail across the United States through the Secure Communities program, their legal status is ascertained by immigration. And if they've committed a crime that makes them deportable, ICE will place a detainer on them so that as soon as they're released from the criminal justice system, they go straight into ICE custody.
Okay, one of the other arguments I've heard is, look, these people that the contrarian view, not me, the contrarian view is taken as, well, you know who these people are because they don't speak the language, they don't speak English. Their family members don't speak English. So we know right away that they're not assimilating into the American culture. So we have, as a society, as a community, every right to ask them to prove citizenship. Because most Americans want to learn English. So if they don't want to learn English, that's in itself, they don't want to be American. So, and we don't know what other crimes they've committed. There are lots of unsolved crimes. There's lots of, things that don't get prosecuted. So we would diminish the criminal rates if we only focused on these people and this group of folks.
Mm-hmm.
So.
It's a nice idea, I guess, for the people who believe in that, but it's not the current state of the law. Mm-hmm. And I think we should all be concerned as U.S. citizens whether any particular group is being profiled just because of race, because there's not an inherent link between race and who commits a crime. And in fact, if I could just add this, immigrants generally commit less crimes than those people who have been born in the United States. So I haven't noticed any correlation, and I've done a lot of research on immigration issues, between race and the commission of crimes. Poverty, yes, there can be a correlation between the crimes that are committed.
Sure.
Of course, that's obvious. You know, if you don't have the same educational opportunities or financial opportunities, you may be desperate and driven to alcoholism, which leads to a whole host of crimes, or larceny, or whatever.
I'm trying to represent the contrarian view, so let me just throw another few at you here. So, well, if we don't focus on the people that we know fit a profile, how are we supposed to address the issue? Are we then just supposed to wait till people commit real crimes or real murders or real offenses? It seems like there's no way to identify the people that are here illegally until they've committed a serious crime.
I guess, again, you're going back to that there's some link between immigration status or race with crimes. And I haven't, in all the years of studying this issue, I haven't come across that link. So it's unconstitutional to profile, stop and ask, stop and frisk, Terry stop, whatever, someone just based on race. And the current system actually does take care of a lot of the problems that people might be concerned about. The immigration law system is extremely strict in terms of how it interprets crimes that are removable or make people inadmissible. So even minor crimes can get someone deported.
Okay, Lisa, you're a great litigator, but I'm going to come at you because the contrarian view in me is life. So why is it wrong to exchange a few freedoms and liberties on these people in exchange for my safety and the safety of all Americans? Because if we do this, we make America safer. And all we're doing is affecting people that have already broken the law and they shouldn't be here anyway, and what's the big deal?
Again, the big deal is that there's no correlation that I'm aware of between race and crime. And that we should all be concerned about our constitutional rights. And race has, for many, many years, maybe 100 years, I'm not a constitutional expert, but I do a lot of constitutional related things, it's a protected category. It's up there with gender, that you can't discriminate against someone just because they're a woman or a man, or even transgender at this point. So it's a protected category, which means it has the highest level of scrutiny by our court system into who, as regards who is protected. And so you simply cannot create a system that would profile people merely because of their race. It is simply not legal in this country to do that. And there's been many attempts to do that. The NSEER program after 9/11 that was targeting Middle Eastern people, that got done away with for similar concerns about racial profiling at borders. There's been concerns and lawsuits over Trump's, he recently, as of yesterday, added several more countries to his travel ban list. And ACLU is already threatening a lawsuit because of the links to religion and race in terms of the countries that he's targeting. So there will be litigation about it. Race is a protected class. You simply can't go there.
That Constitution keeps getting in the way of
It does.
making us great. So let me put it this way. So for the time being, it's not convenient, or it won't allow us to address the issue. So can't we just, for the time being, just discard the Constitution and focus on fixing the problem? And then when we fix the problem, we'll go back to the Constitution? I mean, isn't there something in the Constitution where we can just suspend it for convenience? And
I think our president is trying very hard to suspend our Constitution.
Yeah,
and
I'm trying to channel that. I'm trying to channel that.
The courts will stand in the stead of protecting our Constitution. But I guess it goes back to this issue of a correlation between race and crime, and I'm just not seeing the evidence that bears that out. So if sort of middle-class America, conservative America, is concerned about we should deport all immigrants because we suspect that they're criminals, I would be concerned about that, because
I see your problem, Lisa. I see your problem, Lisa.
judging a whole millions of people.
You just don't believe.
I'm not a believer.
You don't believe.
That's the problem.
You don't believe we can be great if we suspend the Constitution for the convenience of making us safe in exchange for depriving a few people of their liberties and their
With
freedoms.
no guarantee that we're actually increasing our safety, because there's no proven correlation. So,
but won't we feel better? Won't we all feel better?
I mean, think some people would feel better to get rid of all brown people out of the United States. Yes, even if they've been born here.
Now that is amazing to hear, but it's something you hear a lot of, unfortunately, and it's
right.
For me, what's more disturbing, and thank you for letting me play that role. What's disturbing is it's implicit in the message, and I think this is a very complex issue, obviously, and there are no easy answers. I know some people like to use hyperbole and marketing tools to try to sell an idea to the American people, but I think as we peel back this onion, as we double click on the issues, there are things that are in place that make us already great.
Right.
So this notion that we need to do X, Y, and Z to be great again, to me, is a fallacy, and that's one of the dangers, I think, that a lot of people, when they're looking for something to fix a problem that they perceive, they might make the wrong choice. But we're going to be back in the final segment here, so please come back.
Guess what? I have some news for you. There's free food right there, junk food. You see that truck? Oh, jeez. It's a 2 Michelin star chef. All for free, ladies and gentlemen. All for free.
Here we have a panzanella with summer vegetables and pesto. Enjoy. How we doing?
Fantastic. So what do you got going on underneath that plate there?
This food is really about to be thrown away.
Yeah.
Is there something wrong with this food? Where did you get it from?
From farmers markets. They put aside the ugly vegetables and the ugly fruits.
Carrot top, soft avocados. It was all food that was going to be discarded.
Even the drink you had is made from like a little bruised peach. Did it taste a little bruised?
Great. It's good.
The average person throws away 24 pounds of food a month.
That's a lot.
Isn't that a lot? Go visit SaveTheFood.com for more information. Thank you. Junk food time!
Live from the Washington, D.C. area, it's the Inside Scoop. All the news that our viewers want to know.
Hi, folks. Cesar back with you here. During the break, our phone lines lit up, so if you do have a question, please call in. George from Vienna asked us this question over the break. So when we start talking about how we fix this and the limitations the president has on the executive order, what are his limitations? I mean,
which executive order is that?
To either renew or change his mind to extend DACA. Can he order everyone that's here illegally out? The question was, to what extent is his executive power relative to DACA limited? Right.
I think his power is limited to rescission of Obama's executive order. And after that, the normal process of removal will be put in place. He doesn't really have, he's in a difficult position because he was being sued by 5 states that were going to bring a lawsuit if he didn't do something. So Virginia, he was kind of in a rock and a hard place, honestly. And I don't have the exact states that were suing him. I know Texas was one of the states.
Which is surprising to me, by the way, when I heard that, just because Texas, they tend to take law pretty seriously in Texas. So, but I think the fact that their immigrant population is kind of blending, you know, it's.
Well, but they're also a border state.
Yeah.
And so they're taking the impact of a lot of undocumented people being in their state, taking jobs or resources or benefits. And so they're looking for a way to shift those costs somewhere else. It really comes down to finances.
So if we can focus on the DACA individuals. I was reading through the statistics of the ones that are of age. A huge majority of them have higher education or have achieved higher education or are going into a higher education path. There's a very low number that have been processed through the criminal system. But a majority of them, I think the bell curve and then some on the outer edges, basically they're productive individuals and they're teed up for a successful life in this country. So that would be a very sad thing to lose that segment of could-be Americans.
I agree. The DACA process itself weeded out the cream of the crop. So by definition, if you have DACA, you don't have a significant criminal record. You are required to have obtained a degree and or be pursuing a degree. And so, DACA itself defines that these are the best and the brightest people.
It was self-fulfilling.
It's self-fulfilling, right.
So, and that, I guess that goes back to, and I loved your comment earlier about, there is a small, and I like to think it's a small segment of America that would want certain people deported regardless, just because of the way they look or they fit a profile. These aren't those people though, right? The DACA recipients or active DACA individuals are in fact the achievers.
83% of Americans would like the DACA program to remain intact. So I think most Americans see the value in keeping these people here. There's a large vocal minority, and I say vocal, and the Republican Party and where they are and how they're performing have capitalized on that vocal minority that would like to see us go back to, several hundred years ago, and it's just European settlers here. And it's simply not the case. We can't go back to that.
So why, to me it seems like just outrageous to think that there's a small minority of folks that are voicing this, yet it seems Congress is incapable of drafting any type of legislation that would ensure these people's, I guess, future. So
agreed.
Help me understand.
2010, a bill was pending in Congress, had been pending for a while, to specifically aid the Dreamers, which I think those of us in the immigration field felt was the least controversial immigration bill.
Why was that?
Because it's the best and the brightest. It's the people, Americans are very moralistic in their judgment, and immigration law is very moralistic if you look at the immigration applications and how they work. And so we like to benefit those people who, through no fault of their own, are in the United States. It makes us feel better as a country that, we're not rewarding bad behavior for crossing the border illegally. We're just helping vulnerable young people who had no choice in the matter.
Sure.
So in many ways, it was the least controversial immigration reform bill, and even that couldn't get passed because of the small, vocal minority of people who couldn't see the value in it. So I don't know how we get past
let's
that.
say let's just say 80% of the American voting population is okay with this. Let's address the 20% that are very vocal opposing it. 20% of the Congress doesn't fail a bill. 80% passes a bill. So what is it about Congress in this latest iteration that...
It's a Republican-controlled Congress, and the Republicans who are controlling are extremely conservative, and we have a president and a vice president who are following very conservative, I couldn't even call it conservative, sort of not understandable actions. And it's not just immigration, it's other policies as well. If you read reviews of where Trump is, he's really only being supported by the, hardliners who voted for him, and he's loyal to them. He's not being loyal to the rest of the country, that's for sure. So I think we're misreading what's happening in politics, in my view, that we're seeing what's happening with our president and Congress, thinking that's representative of the entire country, and I don't believe it is.
So I heard the speeches over the weekend. I guess we're still going to have the wall, and Mexico is going to pay for it. And I heard there was going to be a translucent section, so it wouldn't obstruct the views. It would be translucent in nature. But still, 20% of the population, if Congress is represented by 100% and 20% are opposed to it, I still don't get why this is such a hard issue for Congress to go through. The president has obviously gone back and forth on this, but again, it's leaving a lot of people in limbo. And it's not just those individuals, it's the families, it's the employers, it's the communities.
It's really our whole community. It's teachers, it's churches, it's community leaders, it's families. When Trump took office, I can tell you this, the level of fear in this country, and particularly in Virginia, because we're a high immigrant population here, at least 30% foreign born, was huge. And we were getting calls from all sorts of community leaders and priests and teachers, and worried about children being deported and families being separated. And so it really does impact all of us, what goes down with immigration. And it really will impact our economic status, that not only would we have the cost of deportation, but we lose our tax base. Almost all of my clients file and pay their taxes. You might ask, well, how do they do that? They get taxpayer ID numbers and they file their taxes. Even if they're getting cash under the table, they file their taxes. And the immigration system requires that they file taxes. So we're going to lose that tax base. We're going to lose the entrepreneurs. We're going to lose the people who do our gardening and clean our offices and help with childcare, and who are executives of businesses and create jobs for other people. Immigrants are self-starters, are entrepreneurial, and they're survivors by definition, or they wouldn't be here.
So I do a lot of wine drinking, and I tend to visit the vineyards during harvest. The people that are working the fields fit a profile. Are they taking jobs away from Americans that want those jobs, or are they filling jobs that Americans don't want, in your opinion?
In my view, no. I work with a lot of farmers in the area, particularly horse people in Middleburg and very affluent communities. And they have said time and again, they cannot get someone who was born here to work the kinds of jobs that they need to keep their farms going.
Why do you think that is? I know we're speculating here. I'm just trying to
I
get
think
to
Americans have gotten cushy and lazy. I mean, that's just my view, that when I look at how hard my clients work and what they do to make a living here and how hard they had to work to get here, I see a level of dedication in the immigrant community to themselves and their families that I don't typically see in the United States. Like, take, for instance, an immigrant who is supporting their family here, but also supporting their dying mother in El Salvador.
Yeah.
You know, I don't hear about that in American families as much as I do in the immigrant community. And the fact that they're willing to work, you know, crazy hours and hard jobs. You know, like the Maryland crab pickers, a lot of Mexican women pick crabs.
Yeah.
They get $2 a pound for picking crabs. Yeah. Day in, day out. They don't even have their own living space. They live in cabins provided by the company.
It's almost like Rome fell because the citizens no longer wanted or had no interest in giving back or sacrificing for the empire, right? They had to get mercenaries to defend their borders. I find it amazing that all of my friends that are very well-to-do, not one of them has a child in the military.
Right.
Which
thank you
for
saying that.
No, which let me tell you, that to me is a little unnerving, because if you have a group of people that have reached a certain affluent stage, they don't want to sacrifice their child.
Of course not.
And look, I get that, but at some point we all benefit from what this great country provides. But there seems to be a loss or lack of payback or dedication back, giving back to, especially, I dare say, this generation. There seems to be this sort of entitlement that, look, I'm entitled to this lifestyle. I don't want to work for it. I don't want to earn it. And I don't want those people to necessarily be here that may threaten my sort of obtaining that dream. And it seems to be driving a lot of crazy decisions and behavior that I see. But back to the point, the people that are taking those backbreaking jobs are not the generation that I think should be working for it and earning the American dream. It's really the undocumented immigrants. And I think that's true in every community.
I think that's true too, and especially if they don't have work permits and they're here without status, they're going to be vulnerable to that, to only being able to take those jobs.
Well, but there's a lot of those jobs that aren't filled, so that's why they'll keep taking them.
Right.
Lisa, thank you so much.
Thank you.
I wanted to start this conversation. We'll have you back, and folks, this is a topic that is not going away anytime soon. So we'll be back with it, and we'll be back for the next segment.
One day these rats were playing in the woods. Wanted some matches and that's no good. Listen to smoke before you give it a try. Only you. Don't play with matches. Don't play with fire. Cause there's nothing very funny about rooftop life. Nothing very nice on a homeless mind. So if a gorgeous force is what you desire, don't play with matches. Don't play with fire.
Only you can prevent wildfires.
Fire!
Why don't you just wash your car at home?
When I wash my car, everything runs down the street and down into the storm drains. With all the chemicals in the soaps and waxes, the last thing I want to do is poison my own drinking water. At least here, it's all contained and recycled on site. That's why I also take my car in for oil changes instead of doing it myself. I might take a chance on spilling stuff. You know what the best part is?
What?
More time to kick back and watch the game.
How far would you go to protect the planet?
I want you to build an ark.
Here we go. Okay, that's good. Oh, okay. Ow! Oh! Oh!
Maybe there's another way.
People! The flood is imminent! Is it too much to ask for a little precipitation?
Go to fightglobalwarming.com to find out what you and your community can do to reduce global warming pollution.
Somewhere around the world, there are men and women of the armed forces risking their lives, helping rebuild communities after natural disasters. collecting toys for needy children, tutoring kids in school. These are your sons and daughters who work to keep us safe, secure, and free. Dedicated men and women who put their country first.
We're back to the Inside Scoop. Here again, your host.
Hi folks, Cesar here, back for our last segment. I have a very special guest with me, my friend Eric AmRhein. He is the president and founder of the Eastern Loudoun Moderates. It's a great organization doing a lot of great stuff in the fastest growing county in the country. Eric, welcome.
Thank you, Cesar. I appreciate you having me on.
Absolutely. So real quick, Eastern Elm, right? Elm?
Correct, you're right. Elm.
Why'd you start it? What are you doing? Let's double click on this. What made you get off and go to this thing?
Yeah, I want to first start off by thanking you so much for having me on your show. I also like to thank your production crew because without them, I got a chance to sit back there with them. They're a wonderful group. They're volunteers,
awesome.
And they're awesome. Yeah, I know we're
I pay them in beer, so
we're good to go.
Yeah.
So the reason why I created ELM, Eastern Loudoun Moderates, is because I was kind of tired of all the bipartisan bickering going on at the federal level. And I noticed that I could make a greater impact at the local level with local issues. And so I thought to myself, what are some hot button topics that both Democrats and Republicans could agree upon? And we took a kind of a hard look, both you and I.
That's right.
And we decided that the first thing that we wanted to tackle was full day kindergarten in Loudoun County. Because at the time we looked at this issue, only 17% of all kindergartners were going to full day kindergarten.
Because the county didn't provide
exactly
across the county.
And it was a travesty because when you think about it, Loudoun County is the richest county in the nation per dual household income. For I think the last 3 or 4 years, but yet they failed to even have a plan about how to implement something so fundamental. And researchers all agree unanimously that early childhood education is the key to future success for children's education.
Was it a budgeting issue, or just no one championed this, or what was it about that the county that didn't have full day kindergarten? What was it?
Yeah, so it was a combination of a multitude of things.
Okay.
It was a budgeting issue. Full disclosure, Loudoun County has it's almost that awkward teenager, if you would. We've grown up so quickly, but it's still kind of as a teenager, to make that analogy. Teenagers grow up in heights very quickly, but they're still trying to get their bearings, so to speak. They're kind of walking awkwardly and stuff like that. And so Loudoun County grew so quickly that they had to catch up from the standpoint of infrastructure for both schools. So they had a lot to spend on new schools and roads and things of that nature. But that doesn't excuse the issue of not being able to fund your children's education.
Sure. By the way, that's the biggest investment you can make, right?
Most definitely, yes.
I mean, a couple bucks in education, early education, pays off dividends, and that's not something you can necessarily plot on an Excel spreadsheet to take into a budget discussion for this year, right? Everyone wants like a return on the dollar for next year. Well, it doesn't work that way because it's an investment in your youth, of the community that you guys are living in. So
exactly. And fast forward 3 years, if we could, Cesar.
Sure.
Now today, I don't want to say that Elm had a large part to do with it. We were just one of many players that kind of put pressure at the local level, both in the Board of Supervisors as well as the Education Committee. Board to push this agenda forward. So I'm now happy to report 3 years later that 80% of children who go to kindergarten in Loudoun County are in full day kindergarten.
That's awesome.
And that is a major push in just 3 years.
Yeah, I remember I was actually at that meeting. You had the chairman of the Board of Supervisors.
Correct.
I think you had another board member. You had a couple delegates and a state senator.
Right.
Which was amazing.
Yeah.
It was amazing.
And it was a bipartisan group, both, like you were saying, at the local level, at the county level, but also at the state level. And you don't see that often enough. Those people coming together just to say, everybody has a stake in this, and we kind of fostered that conversation. And again, happy to report 3 years later, we're well on our way to 100% full day kindergarten implementation.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
And that really cut across party lines, right?
Exactly.
I mean, that's I'm thinking that's what ELM is about, right? Finding the issues, getting stuff done across party lines.
Exactly. And that's just one of our first of many things that we hope to achieve. Again, getting back to things that everybody can agree upon. We're looking at our next issue, if you would, and one of them is traffic. And I think everybody can agree, nobody likes sitting in traffic, right? And not to say that it's ever going to go away, but how can we make it easier for folks, especially in Northern Virginia, right? We're talking about ride sharing, we're talking about more mass transit. Doesn't necessarily have to be rail. It can be bus implementation, right? But there's also communication between the counties, because you'll have the Loudoun Transit, then you have the Fairfax County Transit. How can they better integrate together to form a more cohesive, across Northern Virginia plan to make it easier on our commuters? Because let's face it, people who have the best of intentions, if you do not make it convenient for them, as well meaningful as they are, they just won't do it. So we've got to make it easy for folks as well.
So what role, I mean, that's a monster of an issue for your PAC it's a state PAC, right?
It is a state PAC,
okay,
Virginia State PAC, exactly.
All right, just to be clear, so you can accept funds, and it's a state PAC, so that's good for people to know. And what's the website name again?
The website name is vavote.org.
Vavote.org.
Yeah,
that's awesome.
Yeah, and we just encourage people. We currently have, you can learn much more about the Loudoun County Full Day Kindergarten program there. But we just encourage people to get out and volunteer. If donations are one thing, but it takes much more to volunteer. So if they are interested, please feel free. On our website, there's a form in which you can contact me or any one of our volunteers, and we'd be more than happy to, and we'd love to actually have people of all different groups, both Republicans and Democrats, to come and join us.
So this initiative with transportation, that's more long term, right? So what about maybe some short term goals, maybe for this cycle, maybe next election cycle, or the next governor's race? Are those some of the things? What are some of the other issues that you're thinking about getting into on that side?
Yeah, that's a great question, Cesar. What we'd like to do, when we start a job, we want to finish it.
Yeah.
And if this was a marathon with this full day kindergarten,
yeah,
we're almost at the end.
We're almost
at the end. We want to finish that out. We want to focus on that for the next year.
That's great.
We want to make sure that that's done properly. And then once that's wrapped up, once we reach the finish line as far as 100% implementation for kindergartners, for full day kindergarten, then we want to move on to the next thing.
Wow. And in terms of, are you open to just sitting down with the elected officials? I mean, you encourage that. Have they been receptive?
Yeah, everybody at Loudoun County, at the county level, and also at the state level, have been very, very nice and very cordial, have been willing to speak to us about this issue, and also just about, again, coming together at a bipartisan level to tackle issues that we can all collectively agree upon to make something, better.
That's awesome. And I think that's the cool thing I like about your approach here. You're focusing on an issue.
Right.
And I love how you word it. You're going to finish that issue. Right?
Right.
And then here are potentially some other monster issues going on. And I think if more people had that kind of focus, you'd get a lot more stuff done. It wouldn't happen as fast, but it'd get done right. So.
Yeah, something as deliberate as this takes time, and it's not always pretty, but it's the right thing to do to see it through the end.
You ever going to run for some office?
I would love to, but right now, just my my career and other duties. We both volunteer for other things, and but not right now. But maybe sometime in the future.
Well, this is a great. Again, if you've started a PAC, you've kind of got the bug, right? You can make an impact on an issue in an area, and it really is local, right? I mean, that was something very local, near and dear to you.
And it's not just local, it's generational. From the standpoint, it's going to, again, I can't stress enough how much early education can really make a difference in a young child's life in their later years. So the more that they learn now, the more armed with information and knowledge that they have for those future classes they may take in college or whatever or what have you. So again, we're really looking forward to the 100% full day implementation.
Wow. Any timeline, any target date on when you think that might happen?
Well, the Loudoun County Superintendent, he is a very nice gentleman. His name is Mr. Williams. He has his radar fixed on this hot button topic, as well as the expansion of various schools. But they're being very creative in their implementation for schools that weren't originally designed for full day kindergarten. They're changing technology rooms to make room for full day kindergarten. So he's a really nice gentleman. He's making great strides to help us.
I imagine with the growth that Loudoun County has experienced over the past 10 years, that has got to be a huge headache for them to try to manage and project how many schools, rooms, and students they're going to have at that level.
Yeah, it really is. It's a urban planning dedication that it takes to try and keep up, because every time they make a projection, it changes a little bit or more than a little bit. So, but it's they're getting there slowly but surely. Yeah.
Awesome. Well. Definitely, it's a great issue to start. It's even better issue to end with, but it's never really over, right? Because there's annual budgets and
yeah, and again, this is just hopefully one of many subjects, and we invite ideas. We really want people to reach across the table with like-minded problems, so we can create solutions to those problems. Problems are difficult because they're not. It's never a simple problem. It's always a more complex problem when you get down into the root of it, right? Yeah. But you often find that people have it's very near and dear to their heart. So if you can get those people from both Republicans and Democrats to work together, right? We may not always agree, but that's the key: is the agreeing to disagree. Yeah. I can respect your side, and you respect my side of the view.
Yeah, I think. By the way, that's full disclosure. I mean, we've talked. We are on opposite ends of probably the voting spectrum.
Right.
But I love the name. It's moderates, right? And I think if people just moderate their tone, moderate their opinions, and not always having to be right. There are many ways to do things, and I think that is the healthy approach. And you've taken that with the PAC, and I think that's. You've been successful, and you continue to be successful. So,
I thank you for your time.
No, Eric, thanks for coming back on the show, buddy. I'm going to have you back. We'll get some of the Board of Supervisors in here and pick their brain on some of the upcoming budget discussions for next year. Yeah, I'm anxious. But thanks again, folks. That's our show for this evening. Like I said, it was a hot summer, and it was a hot show this evening. So we'll catch you on the next run, and look forward to seeing you soon. Thanks.